Delaware Tech's headquarters smells like overheated plastic and ambition, with undertones of desperation masked by industrial-strength air fresheners. The building, a monument to late 90s optimism, squats on the outskirts of Wilmington like a glass-and-steel confession of someone's MBA thesis. My floor, Product Resilience, a name chosen by committee and regretted by everyone, sits between legal and catering, which feels like a cosmic joke about the life cycle of ideas. Legal, where dreams go to die in triplicate. Catering, where they're reborn as terrible sandwich metaphors at company meetings. I'm Eleanor Kingsley, Senior Systems Architect, which means I translate panic into flowcharts and speak fluent deadline anxiety. 11 years here, watching 5 CEOs promise different versions of the same digital transformation. I've survived 3 right-sizings, 2 pivots, and 1 catastrophic rebrand that cost more than my annual salary and changed our logo from blue to innovation teal. That morning in March, the kind of gray Tuesday that makes you question your life choices, the executive steering group held their quarterly planning summit in the glass terrarium upstairs. The C-suite called it the Vision Center, but we knew it as the panic room, where quarterly earnings went to be tortured into optimistic projections. We, my team of 6, were explicitly uninvited, despite being the ones who actually understood how our products functioned in the real world. The email from Gareth, the VP of Strategy, arrived at 7:43 a.m. with the subject line, Q2 Strategic Alignment, Process Optimization. It read like a haiku of condescension. To minimize friction, Product Resilience will observe asynchronously. Translated, stay in your cave while the adults make decisions about the technology you built. Gareth, for context, was hired 8 months ago from a consulting firm whose primary qualification was never having worked in manufacturing. His office was a shrine to disruptive innovation, whiteboards covered in buzzword bingo, books about agile transformation stacked like monuments to self-delusion. He wore the kind of expensive sneakers that scream "I understand millennials" and spoke in TED Talk soundbites even during casual conversations about the weather. The building itself seemed designed for surveillance disguised as transparency. Glass walls everywhere, supposedly to foster collaboration, but really so middle management could watch you check your phone or witness the exact moment your soul left your body during another all-hands meeting. The carpet, industrial beige with flecks of optimism that the facilities manager called sunset coral, showed every coffee stain from the past decade, a geological record of caffeine-fueled desperation. Our corner occupied the building's sweet spot, close enough to the kitchen for coffee runs, far enough from the executive floor to maintain plausible deniability. We had the best view, a parking lot where seagulls fought over sandwich crusts from the food truck, and beyond that, the Delaware River looking perpetually disappointed, like it had expected better from the Industrial Revolution. The setup was perfect for what we called productive invisibility, close enough to observe the corporate theater, distant enough to do actual work. Our workspace was an archaeological dig of previous strategic initiatives, standing desks from the wellness phase, collaboration pods from the open office experiment, and a meditation corner that now housed broken printers and Devon's collection of vintage circuit boards. We had questions about data integrity thresholds, about the new security audits mandated by our insurance company, about whether the company's AI-first slide deck was anything more than clip art and wishful thinking. Specifically, we wanted to know how they planned to retrofit machine learning capabilities onto firmware that barely supported basic error logging. These seemed like reasonable concerns for the people responsible for keeping industrial equipment from exploding. Evidently, questions create drag. The irony wasn't lost on us that a company building systems for manufacturing precision had executives who treated planning like jazz improvisation, all style, questionable substance, and a disturbing faith that everything would somehow work out in the end. So we watched from the mezzanine like kids outside a candy store window, faces pressed against glass that might as well have been one-way mirror. The mezzanine itself was an architectural afterthought, a curved balcony that offered perfect sight lines into the executive conference room but no audio. We'd become a silent Greek chorus to our own professional demise. I took notes on a yellow legal pad because it annoys people who think tablets make you smarter. Each page filled with observations that would never make it into meeting minutes, the way Gareth gestured like he was conducting an invisible orchestra, how the CFO checked her phone every 37 seconds, I timed it, the exact moment when our CTO's expression shifted from skepticism to resignation. The livestream lagged every 12 seconds, our infrastructure team's passive-aggressive commentary on executive priorities. But the message was clear through the digital static: Delaware Tech would pivot, no, pirouette, into predictive analytics for supply chain finance. The language was pure consultant speak, ecosystem integration, value stream optimization, customer-centric paradigm shifts. Each phrase felt like watching someone murder the English language with a thesaurus. All legacy contracts would be retrofitted by Q3, because apparently 3 months is plenty of time to rebuild a decade of industrial relationships. Our current product line, stability firmware for industrial sensors that kept factories running safely, was deemed non-strategic. The term landed like a death sentence dressed in business casual. 11 years of work, thousands of hours debugging code that prevented actual explosions, reduced to a line item on a slide titled Portfolio Rationalization. Gareth ended the session with a shrug that belonged in a museum of white guy nonchalance, the kind of casual dismissal that costs other people their livelihoods but doesn't interfere with his dinner reservations. He wore a smile that suggested this was all very exciting, like he was announcing a surprise party instead of professional obituaries. The presentation slides were a masterclass in corporate doublespeak. Synergistic platform optimization. Vertical integration touchpoints. Agile monetization frameworks. Each bullet point was a small death of meaning, beautiful typography wrapped around intellectual vacancy. I watched our actual clients, factories in Ohio, mills in Pennsylvania, assembly lines that employed real humans with mortgages and dental appointments, get reduced to legacy pain points in 17-point Helvetica. The financial projections showed hockey stick growth curves that defied both physics and common sense. Revenue would double by leveraging AI-driven insights that didn't exist yet. Market penetration would expand through strategic partnerships with companies we'd never contacted. Costs would decrease through operational excellence that translated to firing people. Back downstairs, my team sat around the battered conference table we called the Raft, a piece of furniture that had survived 3 office redesigns through sheer structural integrity and strategic immobility. The wood bore scars from countless brainstorming sessions, coffee rings that formed Olympic symbols, pen marks from frustrated debugging sessions, and a burn mark from when Jules accidentally left a soldering iron on during a late-night hardware fix. Theo, our youngest at 26, traced the wood grain like it was a map out of this place. His MIT hoodie had equations scribbled in Sharpie across the sleeves, quantum mechanics mixed with grocery lists and inside jokes in Python syntax. He'd joined us 2 years ago, fresh from grad school, full of ideas about how technology could make the world better. Watching him lose that optimism in real time felt like witnessing a slow-motion car crash. Ria chewed her pen until ink blossomed on her lip, a nervous habit that appeared whenever management made pronouncements that defied logic. She was our data whisperer, the one who could coax meaningful insights from the messiest datasets. Her desk looked like a shrine to organized chaos, color-coded notebooks, 17 different pens, and a small plant she'd named after her favorite algorithm. Devon, our hardware whisperer, methodically disassembled a broken mouse, laying out components like an autopsy. His hands moved with surgical precision. 10 years of working with delicate sensors had given him the touch of a watchmaker. Every piece had its place on his desk, arranged with the kind of order that comes from understanding how things break and how to fix them. Jules stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the water stains, 37, we'd verified last month during another strategic realignment meeting. Jules was our poet programmer, the one who wrote comments in iambic pentameter and named variables after characters from Shakespeare. Their code was art that happened to compile, elegant solutions wrapped in literary references. Matteo, who'd survived 3 previous pivots, just smiled the way you do before telling a cancer diagnosis joke. He was our institutional memory, the one who remembered which initiatives had failed and why. His cubicle was a museum of corporate archaeology, branded notebooks from dead projects, coffee mugs commemorating products that never launched, stress balls from team-building exercises that built nothing but cynicism. Nobody spoke for what felt like geological time. Outside, it started to rain, the kind of March drizzle that makes Delaware feel like purgatory's waiting room, where souls wait to be assigned to either redemption or eternal middle management. The sound of water against glass provided a soundtrack to our collective existential crisis. Theo looked up from his wood grain archaeology. "So what do ghosts do?" he asked, and something in his voice, a mixture of resignation and rebellion, made us all lean forward like conspirators planning a heist. The question hung in the air like smoke. What do ghosts do when they're told they don't exist? When their work is dismissed as irrelevant, their concerns labeled as friction, their expertise reduced to operational drag? Ghosts, however, can walk through walls. We spent the next 10 business days in what I dubbed negative time, hours logged off calendar, existing in the gaps between official meetings and sanctioned activities. Slack channels archived before they existed, code committed under throwaway hashes that wouldn't appear in any project timeline. We weren't defying orders exactly, we were simply declining to disappear with the grace management expected. The work became our secret language. We communicated through commit messages that looked like inside jokes but contained technical specifications. We scheduled coffee breaks that were actually code reviews. We held casual conversations that were intensive debugging sessions. The irony tasted metallic. The company wanted frictionless operations, so we gave them Teflon, smooth, non-stick, and utterly invisible to conventional oversight. The pivot required gutting the sensor firmware's heartbeat module, the piece that keeps factories from mistaking a 2-pound bearing failure for Armageddon. This wasn't hyperbole. I'd seen a textile mill in North Carolina lose $2.3 million in a single afternoon because someone ignored a vibration alert that seemed probably fine. Gareth's timeline assumed we'd slap a REST wrapper on legacy C++ and call it a microservice, the kind of technical duct tape solution that looks good in PowerPoint but fails spectacularly when exposed to reality. His project plan, written by consultants who'd never debugged anything more complex than a broken hyperlink, allocated 2 weeks for API modernization and 1 week for legacy integration testing. They might as well have scheduled 15 minutes for teach physics to work differently. Instead, we forked the last stable branch, rewrote the scheduler in Rust for memory safety, and embedded a lightweight ML model that could predict bearing fatigue from vibration signatures. The decision felt like performing surgery with kitchen knives, technically possible, but requiring skills not covered in any corporate training program. We did it between 7:14 p.m. and 3:42 a.m. for 12 consecutive nights, fueled by cold brew that could strip paint and the particular vindictiveness that comes from being underestimated by people who couldn't write Hello World without a tutorial. The office after hours became our laboratory, our sanctuary, our rebellion headquarters. The work became a meditation on what technology could accomplish when freed from committee oversight and quarterly earnings pressure. Each night, the cleaning crews arrived at 11 sharp, their vacuum hums providing white noise for our coding sessions. Maria, who'd been cleaning these floors for 6 years, started bringing us extra coffee pods and occasional encouraging nods. She understood the look of people fighting for something that mattered. Security guards made rounds at midnight and 3, nodding at us through the glass like we were exotic specimens in an aquarium exhibit titled Programmers in Their Natural Habitat. Jeff, the midnight guard, was a former Navy electronics technician who actually understood what we were doing. He'd pause sometimes to ask technical questions, offering insights from his submarine days about systems that absolutely could not fail. The vending machines hummed differently after hours, less demanding, more conversational. The Snickers machine on floor 2 developed a personality quirk where it would occasionally dispense 2 bars for the price of 1, like it was rewarding our dedication. We took it as a good omen. Ria discovered that bearing failures followed patterns similar to cardiac arrhythmias, so we borrowed algorithms from medical device firmware. Her breakthrough came on night 4 when she realized that healthy machines, like healthy hearts, have subtle rhythms that change gradually under stress. Catastrophic failures weren't random events, they were the final notes in long symphonies of mechanical distress. Devin reverse-engineered the acoustic fingerprints of healthy machinery, building a library of industrial heartbeats. He spent hours with headphones, listening to recordings from factories worldwide, learning to distinguish between the wheeze of a failing fan and the whisper of bearing wear. His desk became a shrine to mechanical poetry, oscilloscope printouts that looked like abstract art, frequency analyses that revealed the hidden music of industry. Jules wrote poetry in the comments, haikus about entropy and hope, sonnets addressed to stubborn memory leaks. Their code became literature that happened to execute, each function a carefully crafted narrative with beginning, middle, and elegant resolution. Reading Jules' comments was like discovering secret messages from a more beautiful world. Mateo, who spoke 3 languages fluently, muttered Spanish curses at stubborn memory leaks, each mierda, a small victory against corporate nihilism. His multilingual debugging sessions became legendary, problems diagnosed in English, solutions coded in Python, celebrations conducted in Spanish. He treated each bug like a personal affront that required both technical precision and creative profanity. The breakthrough came on night 9, when exhaustion had pushed us beyond normal cognitive boundaries into the strange clarity that comes from operating on caffeine and pure determination. Theo, surviving on energy drinks and spite, noticed that our ML model wasn't just predicting failures, it was learning to distinguish between catastrophic breakdowns and routine maintenance needs. It's like teaching a computer to tell the difference between a headache and a stroke, he said, eyes bloodshot but brilliant, gesturing at code that had become something approaching artificial intuition. The model was developing judgment, not just pattern recognition. It could tell the difference between a bearing that needed oil and one that was 3 hours from spectacular failure. We tested it against historical data from our most demanding client, a steel mill in Pittsburgh that ran 24 hours a day and treated equipment maintenance like controlled demolition. Our model caught 14 potential failures that human inspectors had missed, and correctly identified 37 routine maintenance needs as non-critical. The false positive rate was 0.003%, better than most human technicians after 40 years of experience. On the 13th night, with the Delaware River reflecting city lights like scattered diamonds, I pushed the final commit with the message, for anyone who's ever been CC'd instead of invited. The repository showed 47,832 lines of new code, 1,247 commits, and 6 programmers who'd refused to disappear gracefully. Theo added the emoji of a champagne bottle exploding. We tagged it version 2.0 in mockery. Corporate loves decimals and version numbers that suggest iterative improvement rather than revolutionary change. In reality, this wasn't version 2.0 of anything. It was version 1.0 of something entirely new, firmware with a soul, technology that cared about the humans depending on it. 4 days later, a supplier in Dortmund reported that our new module had flagged an impending spindle failure 2 hours before human inspectors noticed scorch marks. The downtime saved €480,000. But numbers don't capture the human element. The shift supervisor who went home to his family instead of staying late for emergency repairs, the maintenance crew who avoided working with dangerous equipment under crisis conditions, the production workers who kept their jobs because the line didn't shut down for a week. The video clip was 23 seconds of grainy smartphone footage, a factory floor where our alert had triggered evacuation procedures just before a bearing seized and threw metal shrapnel across the workspace where people had been standing moments earlier. Shot by Hans, the floor supervisor, on his personal device. No professional lighting, no corporate messaging, just documentation of technology that had prevented something catastrophic. The video went internal viral within hours. First through the Dortmund facility, then to their parent company, then throughout our client network like wildfire. Someone at corporate headquarters leaked it to the general Slack channel, where it collected reactions faster than the system could count them. Suddenly our non-strategic code was the only thing keeping Delaware Tech's brand from trending next to #supplychainmeltdown and #industrial-accident. The German plant manager, Klaus, sent a thank you email in broken English that was more poetry than prose. Your machine brain saved my Tuesday and perhaps my job. How you know the bearing cry before it makes the noise? My wife, she says I should send flowers, but I think you prefer the technical specifications, yes? Attached were detailed logs showing our prediction accuracy, timestamps proving our 2-hour warning window, and photos of the destroyed bearing that looked like abstract sculpture made from twisted metal and expensive mistakes. IT forwarded Klaus's message to everyone, a violation of email protocol that felt like corporate civil disobedience. Within hours, similar reports trickled in from clients across 3 continents, each one a small miracle of prevented disaster. A textile mill in Vietnam where our software detected loom tension failures before they could ruin a €300,000 fabric order. A bottling plant in Kentucky that avoided contaminating an entire production run when our sensors caught a seal failure that would have introduced metal particles into infant formula. An aerospace supplier in Toulouse whose precision instruments stayed calibrated because we predicted environmental fluctuations that would have ruined 6 months of manufacturing tolerances. Each report felt like vindication and rebellion simultaneously. We weren't just preventing equipment failures, we were preventing the human cost of industrial accidents, the environmental damage of failed processes, the financial ruin of companies that depended on our technology to keep their promises to their customers. The Slack buzz started as whispers in private channels and escalated to a symphony of memes in the general discussion forums. Someone created a GIF of our old firmware defeating a giant robot labeled Downtime, complete with anime-style special effects and dramatic music. Another posted a fake movie poster, The Resilience Squad, They Came, They Saw, They Debugged, featuring our team as action heroes with laptops instead of weapons. The IT department, usually Switzerland in corporate politics, started sharing internal metrics showing system performance improvements they couldn't explain through normal updates. Our ghost code was optimizing processes we hadn't even intended to touch, finding inefficiencies in network traffic, memory usage, and database queries like it was cleaning house while everyone slept. But corporate headquarters had bigger problems than celebrating miraculous software. Legal was asking uncomfortable questions about intellectual property ownership, liability coverage, and why field reports were bypassing normal approval chains. The insurance company wanted detailed documentation of any software changes that might affect their risk assessments. The compliance team needed audit trails that didn't exist because we'd worked outside normal project management systems. Gareth appeared in my office like a stormtrooper who'd misplaced his helmet, arriving at 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday when I was debugging a memory leak and enjoying the rare pleasure of work that felt meaningful. His tie was askew, unusual for a man who treated accessories like military insignia, each element positioned to communicate authority and attention to detail. Sweat beads dotted his forehead despite the office's Arctic air conditioning that made everyone else wear sweaters in July. The cologne that usually announced his presence 3 cubicles away had been replaced by the acrid scent of panic, coffee breath mixed with stress hormones and the particular odor of someone who'd spent the morning in crisis meetings explaining things he didn't understand to people who understood them even less. "Who authorized this?" he demanded, voice cracking unauthorized like a teenager asking about car keys, revealing the panic beneath his practiced executive bluster. Behind him, through the glass wall that made privacy impossible, I could see other executives hovering like vultures who'd spotted something dying but weren't sure if it was safe to approach. His hand shook slightly, a detail I filed away as evidence that our little rebellion had achieved something more than professional satisfaction. We'd introduced genuine uncertainty into a system built on the illusion of control, and uncertainty made executives nervous in ways that quarterly reports and market analyses never could. I swiveled my chair, letting the squeak speak for me. The sound echoed in the sudden silence that had fallen over our floor, conversation stopping mid-sentence, keyboards pausing, even the printer holding its breath. Around us, the open floor silence thickened like fog. Colleagues pretended to work while their ears pivoted toward us like satellite dishes tracking an interesting signal. The moment stretched, filling with the ambient sounds of an office pretending normalcy, the hum of fluorescent lights, the whisper of climate control, the distant ping of elevator arrivals. Someone's phone buzzed. A coffee machine gurgled. The building itself seemed to lean in, curious about this confrontation between official authority and actual competence. I said, "We observed asynchronously, just like you asked." The words hung in the air like a challenge wrapped in compliance. Technically accurate, procedurally correct, and utterly subversive. We had followed instructions precisely while completely undermining their intent, the kind of malicious compliance that feels like poetry to anyone who's ever worked in a large organization. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened again like a fish discovering air. A facial tic I'd never noticed before made his left eyelid flutter, stress response or suppressed rage, impossible to tell. His skin had taken on a grayish pallor that made his expensive shirt look like costume jewelry on a mannequin. "Legal needs names," he said finally, the words emerging like a confession of defeat disguised as authority. The request was both predictable and absurd. Legal needed names so they could assign blame, create documentation, establish narratives that would protect the company from liability while sacrificing whoever had dared to demonstrate initiative without permission. Corporate accountability theater at its finest. I handed him a printout, yes, paper, listing every contributor, Theo, Ria, Matteo, Jules, Devon, and me. Each name was typed in different fonts, a small act of aesthetic rebellion. At the bottom, in 9-point courier, was a line from our original employment contracts: all intellectual property developed on Delaware Tech premises, with Delaware Tech resources, remains the exclusive property of Delaware Tech. I watched him read it twice before the implication landed. The miracle was already theirs, they just hadn't noticed. His face cycled through expressions like a broken traffic light. Confusion. Anger. Calculation. Then something approaching respect, quickly suppressed. He folded the paper with unnecessary precision, each crease a small surrender. By end of day, Slack channels bloomed with memes of Gareth's face photoshopped onto a lagging progress bar. Someone, anonymous, of course, posted a poll: who really runs Delaware Tech? Product resilience led 78 to 22. The company's all-hands meeting, scheduled for Friday, was mysteriously rescheduled. Twice. The board convened an emergency session. I wore the charcoal blazer I saved for funerals and IPOs. The boardroom smelled like leather and anxiety, mahogany table so polished you could read your resignation in it. They offered a promotion, Director of Strategic Innovation, salary band obscenely inflated, stock options vesting yesterday. The title came with a corner office, an assistant, and the kind of business cards that feel substantial between your fingers. I listened, nodded, asked for sparkling water. The bubbles felt appropriate, effervescent, temporary, ultimately pointless. Around the table, 8 faces watched me with the intensity of people who'd just discovered their parachute was actually a backpack. Then I slid across the table a single-page resignation letter, font, Garamond, size 11, margins generous enough for regret. The paper made a sound like whispered secrets against the wood. I'm starting a consultancy, I told them. Friction included, no extra charge. The silence that followed was profound, the kind that exists in libraries and morgues. Someone's pen clicked. The air conditioning sighed. Outside the 42nd floor windows, Philadelphia looked miniature and manageable, like a model train set built by optimists. Outside, spring had remembered how to be kind. The rain had stopped, leaving the parking lot painted with prismatic puddles. Theo waited at the curb with a cardboard box of succulents rescued from my desk, small, tenacious plants that thrived on neglect. Ria held an Uber XL door like a valet, grinning with the kind of joy that comes from watching institutions crumble gracefully. The others were already inside, laptop bags and dignity intact. We drove off, leaving behind the glass terrarium and its hum of recycled panic. In the rearview mirror, Delaware Tech looked smaller than its ambitions, just another building full of people trying to matter. If you're ever labeled too much, consider it a compliment wrapped in management speak. The world breaks at the seams no one wants to acknowledge, and friction, well, friction is just another word for traction. 3 months later, our consultancy has 12 clients and a waiting list. We work from a converted warehouse where the coffee tastes like possibilities and every question is welcome. Sometimes, being too much is exactly enough.